Because, William, there has been resistance to the proper imposition of the Supreme Court ruling in Northern Ireland. That is one of the key issues in relation to this. The advice that has been issued by the Equality Commission, frankly, doesn't hold water. The claim that this has been trumped, this ruling, potentially in a Northern Ireland context, could be trumped by the protocol, frankly, is nonsense. And there are numerous legal opinions that have been provided to public bodies, including the Assembly Commission in Stormont, which says that that doesn't hold water. And that's one of the issues that's there. The other point I would make is that the parties that are being supportive of the trans agenda are deeply out of step with their own supporters. I mean, you had a poll there conducted by Lucid Talk in the aftermath of the Supreme Court judgment, which discovered that 3/4 of people in Northern Ireland were supportive of what the Supreme Court had judged, that a woman is a woman, that a man is a man, that biological reality matters. And if you drill down further into the figures, you find that 58% of Sinn Féin voters and 57% of SDLP voters actually support the position which we articulated by unionists and people like myself.
And of course, this is why it becomes an available wedge issue amongst voter groups for parties who want to use it as a wedge issue.
I wouldn't necessarily put it in those terms, William. I think you're being pejorative there.
I'm not. The term wedge issue is an academic term. It's a term used by sophologists across the world to explain how certain issues function and can function. And every political strategist, as you know, Sammy, knows this term and knows the dynamics of this. Every party uses wedge issues at some point.
Yes, I appreciate that, William, and take that on board. But you can equally say that why are nationalist parties so out of touch with their base? Why do you have a situation when a Sinn Féin TD in the South comes out and says that the Supreme Court ruling was a sensible ruling, he's pulled into line by his own party?
Here's a possible explanation for that. That there may be more brand loyalty amongst nationalist voters, that even if they disagree with Sinn Féin on certain issues, they're going to go through and vote for Sinn Féin. But the unionist vote is more up for grabs, you might say. And the unionist vote, there's a problem for the unionist vote, for the Ulster Unionist Party particularly, and for the DUP, in that some of that vote, centrist, liberal unionist, has been drifting off to the Alliance Party over various election cycles. And the question I'm posing is whether the trans issue, wedge issue, is being used by some of those parties, Ulster Unionists and some of the DUP, as a way to kind of break that liberal unionist voter away from the Alliance Party. Maybe stop them voting at all because they won't go anywhere, but that may be helpful for the unionist parties if they don't vote rather than vote Alliance, or get them to come back and vote for a unionist party. That's the question I'm posing.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's politics, William. Highlighting issues that the voter may be in disagreement with the party that they vote for is a fundamental issue. I mean, the TUV have been doing that for a long time and highlighting to potential DUP and Ulster Unionist voters that there are things that those parties are doing that are not.
So, follow-up question, Sammy.
What they're doing.
Follow-up question. Do you think this is strategic and deliberate on the part of some of the DUP and the Ulster Unionist Party? They're deliberately setting out to do this to break away some of those voters away from the Alliance Party.
I think if there was a strategic and deliberate policy in relation to that, you wouldn't be just talking to a member of the TUV, and that you'd have people from the DUP and the Ulster Unionist Party on in relation to this.
Well, we invited them, I think, but they don't want to talk to us about it.
So I mean, that speaks to it.
Well, what does it say? What does it say that they don't want to take part?
It may, well, for one of the issues that the Ulster Unionist Party would have at the minute is the difficulty with Mike Nesbitt announcing this additional funding for a transgender service, which doesn't have medical evidence to support it, which in the past has seen children as young as 5 referred to that service, and frankly would have a better use for public money. And we have a minister who's come out yesterday and said in his interview with the BBC that ministers in the past didn't know how this operated, and he's trying to find clarity even as to what ministers knew about it. Take 5-year-olds and tell them that they're in the wrong body. That is wrong. It is an abuse of children. And there are
that would also be a professional abuse by a therapist if they said that to them.
There are people who are sensible enough and concerned enough to say that, and that's why they're exercised about this issue.
I get it.
Furthermore, There are people who are exercised about this issue because they do not believe that biological men should be given access to female spaces.
Sure.
And that is not about targeting a group in society.
It's an argument.
That is about concern.
It's an argument that can be made. I get it.
That is concern.
And I have no difficulty with you making those arguments. I just want us not to stray away from factual stuff.
Well, I mean, we're getting away. We were allowed to do that when your other contributors were getting into that.
Sammy, don't do that to me.
The characterization that they sought to go down was, this is a vulnerable group and everybody's just ganging up on them. That's not the case. These are people in society who are genuinely concerned about vulnerable children being exposed to ideas and to an agenda which they shouldn't be, and also they're concerned about the protection of single-sex spaces.
All right.
And those are valid.
But do you also accept? I mean,
concerns.
There's no question that parents have valid concerns. But do you also accept that we have a tiny trans community who are a vulnerable community, who have been targeted in terms of violence and crimes, who have a ridiculously high suicide rate because of the pressures they face in a society such as ours? Sammy, do you accept that that's also true and that we need to be sympathetic to that community too?
I don't accept that. And
you don't accept that?
Because I'll tell you why some of the things that you've just said I don't accept. In the CAS review, it says the assertions that gender-affirming care saves lives is not supported by robust longitudinal data. That is a fact. Professor Lewis Appleby...
I didn't ask about longitudinal care. I asked if you accepted and had some sympathy for the trans people who are a tiny community in Northern Ireland because of the vulnerabilities that they experience because of targeting, misrepresentation, misinformation, violence, and the risk of suicidal ideation. Do you have sympathy for that community?
I don't accept that there's a risk of suicidal ideation, and I'll tell you why.
Sammy says that he doesn't target.
Hold on a moment. I'll tell you why. I will quote from data, and I'll show you why I say that. The review of suicides and gender dysphoria at the Tavistock and Portman NHS Foundation Trust, commissioned by the Department of Health and Social Care in England and Wales, written by Professor Lewis Appleby, said, insensitive, distressing, and dangerous talk about suicidal ideation goes against guidance on safe reporting on suicide, and it is not based on statistical evidence.
I'm not going to be able to do it.
Serious questions that that need to be answered about which ministers knew what and when.
Sure.
Mike Nesbitt is still tells us he's trying to still establish that. I don't know why he's pushing ahead with this service when such fundamental questions remain unanswered. But this service
has been going on for years, by the way. It's not a new service. All they've done is combine adult and children's services.
I can assure you that when Edmund Poots says that he didn't know anything about it whenever he was minister, the TUV will make a robust efforts and use of the Freedom of Information Act to get to the bottom of what exactly he knew and when.
Right.
So, I mean, I think there are questions that unionist ministers need to answer in relation to this and how this service is operated, because there are serious concerns from many parents about how children are being...
And so if all of that is true, if unionist politicians are using this as a wedge issue, and if it's also true that, ironically enough, most of the gender identity services in Northern Ireland were put in place, their infrastructure, under the reign of unionist ministers, that could come back to bite you, could it not, Sarah, in an election campaign, if that's pointed out to you?